I've been talking about aggression a lot lately. I talked about it on the podcast. I talked about it on Nelson's channel on the draft. I've done a couple of polls on the channel recently, and I keep seeing the same comments. People were saying that aggression is only viable in solo play if you go for a rush strategy. I think that's wrong. I think you can run aggression in a multitude of ways in solo play and do really well. But it certainly helps to have the right hero that can kind of make up for aggression's shortcomings. So this list is going to be my top 10 heroes for solo aggression play, but it's not necessarily on power. It's about on fun and being able to explore aggression without feeling A, like frustrated or having to rush, or B, just play your hero's really strong cards and kind of ignore the aspect part of the game. Because of that, because it's not based on power and things, I'm not ordering this list. It will be in an order, obviously, an order I think is interesting to talk about them, but I'm not saying the 10th pick is any worse than the first pick. Characters that will do well here will have really good thwarting because threat removal is aggression's main weakness. Good survivability is really valuable too, because if you don't have to invest so much in defense, then you are free to do more aggression things. At number 10, we have Vision, and Vision was actually around the 10th spot on my last list, but remember, this one isn't ordered, so I think Vision is a fantastic candidate for aggression in solo play. Vision has tons of thwarting. He has his signature ally, can get 3 thwarting. Solar Beam, which is his big attack, can actually just be 5 threat removal and decimate a side scheme, so he can already handle all the side schemes and main schemes in a way that most aggression characters could only ever dream of. He's also got this intangible form, and there's a very famous kind of, bring it decks where, you just keep all the minions out against you, but you don't even have to do that. You could do something with the new upgrades that go on minions that came with Iceman's pack, or, he really put them on the map and expanded that already existing kind of archetype, because he can just keep the minions around until he finds the right upgrades and play around it that way. There's a lot he can do with wild resource generators. He can do lots of good ally aggression stuff. He's a really solid candidate to play an aggression without having to rush in many different ways. Next up is Angel, and Angel is the one character here that kind of breaks the accessible build thing because he really wants aerial events, which for aggression basically means you need Nova's pack and or Star-Lord's pack, because that's where Dive Bomb is. But you can technically play him without that, and he does really well. I love running Dropkick in him, for example. You can just throw like Club or whatever you want in, and it will work really well. But it works well because he's rock solid defensively and an extraordinarily good threat remover. He's got Adaptive Plumage, which can be damage and a stun, but it can also be threat removal and a confuse. Metamorphosis also removes threat, but it can get him where he needs. He can use his wings to ready up, thwart twice in his smaller form, and then just go into his big form and unleash carnage. There's so much you can do with Angel. He can do it all, which means you can really let aggression breathe. And I did say this wasn't a rush list either, but Angel's such high damage, you might find yourself accidentally rushing, but you do not have to. I want that to be abundantly clear. At number 8, we have Cable, and I think this will surprise people, but his baseline threat removal is so good, and with his 12 hit points, his body slide form changing, he's got, his defensive force field, he can survive and thwart really well already. And you can start to use some of the side schemes in really, really fun ways in aggression, because yes, okay, he's a multi-aspect character, but you're really playing aggression and just bringing a few extra cards in from the other aspects. And it's really fun. My favorite build for him personally in aggression is what I call double-barreled shotgun. You get out your plasma rifle, and you want to get out Yarnborn, which is the axe from Thor's pack, and you spend an energy to shoot the rifle, and then you spend a physical to swing the axe afterwards, responding to the rifle, so it's kind of a 1-2 hit. I think that's really fun, but again, you don't need to do that. You can do anything you want. You can go ally heavy. You can just go into sort of readying builds. You can do whatever you want with Cable because you can attack with Cable, thwart a side scheme, ready up, and then attack again. He's actually really fun in aggression. At number 7, I've got Ant-Man, and Ant-Man is really, really fun. I absolutely love Ant-Man, and he's got tons of healing and a good defense stat, so he survives well. But what's really fun is that when you go to small form, you get to remove a threat. So you've kind of got that tiny bit of threat removal, turn off the turn, which will help neutralize the main scheme's uptick in solo play, which is going to be really useful for us here. Now, outside of that, his thwarting isn't too good, but again, he will always have that 2 thwarting stat on his small form available, so I think that's really fun, and he does really well with sort of the readying up, I'm going to hit stuff really hard with my big attack stat builds, but you can also kind of start to do some of the sort of multi-target things with Warrior Skill or Aggressive Energy, because Giant Stomp is an attack that hits multiple enemies already. I think that's quite fun. Less useful perhaps in solo play traditionally, but if you go up against something like Mutagen Formula with lots of enemies, that can be really, really fun. At number 6 is Storm, and I almost feel like this doesn't need an introduction, in a very similar way actually to Ant-Man, sort of. You've got Hurricane. It's a form kind of like weather support. You can just change into it every other turn minimum, and it's going to remove 2 threat. So that's going to keep the threat massively in check on its own before you even need to look at your hand of cards or anything like that. But then you've got a Thunderstorm, which is going to boost up her attack stat and all your allies. So ally heavy aggression builds, or if you want to, lean into Storm a bit with her attack, you can do that. But she can just really keep everything under control, and you can play whatever your aggression game plan, that you want to. So Storm is just a fantastic candidate, kind of for anything, but I actually particularly love her in aggression. At number 5, we've got Rogue, which maybe will surprise people because, there's a big amount of people that don't think Rogue is very good, but I actually really like Rogue. Her jacket can get up to 3 thwarting baseline, which is pretty strong. Going Rogue can remove 3 threat and confuse, or it can remove 5 threat. You can kind of use it how you need to. But what makes her especially good sometimes in solo play is superpower adaptation. Because in solo play, you only have yourself to rely on. If you don't have the right cards in hand, that can kind of be a problem. But superpower adaptation kind of lets you reach into your own discard pile and find the perfect solution you need, which I actually really like leaning into. I know putting Touched on the villain, so Bulletproof Bell is really consistent, is very popular, and it is very good, but you don't have to play her like that. And she has such strong thwarting and survivability that you can just go into aggression and you can do extremely well. I really enjoy it in all sorts of builds. Ally, basic attack, event. It's fun. You just need to put in the resource generators. At number 4, I've got Black Widow, and this will surprise people, and I do want to remind people this list isn't ordered, as I said at the beginning. I don't think she's, the 4th most powerful or my 4th favorite in aggression, but she is really, really enjoyable in aggression. That is actually my favorite way to play her. I love leaning into kind of the, assassin kind of theme here, and I think it's kind of different because when those minions are entering play, you can Widow's Bite them. You've got the Covert Ops, which lets you, confuse. You can go Alter Ego quite easily with her. And just experiment with all the sort of aggression sort of pathways you might not otherwise. Lion Wait is an aggression preparation card, but you don't need to play her with that. It's pretty fun, and I just think really thematic, which is what really earns Black Widow her spot here. Also, quickly, I did a video on Black Widow recently about the Widow's Bite, sort of how it's affected by the new 1.6 rules. I wanted to clarify that I prefer the 1.6 rules to the 1.5 rules in terms of clarity, but I don't like that Widow's Bite got slightly weaker. I actually prefer how it worked in the 1.4 rules. That was what I was kind of arguing for, putting my opinion out there for. But regardless, Widow's Bite is still a fun card. At number 3, we've got Gamora. And yes, she's kind of multi-aspect, but you could have her only with aggression cards, and I think she'd still do incredibly well and make this list. So that's not really a factor here. She has so many threat removal events, but she also has her, finesse ability on her identity card. When you play an attack event, you get to remove threat from a scheme. This is vaguely reminiscent of Storm and Ant-Man, how they can ping a threat off. She can just, whenever she's playing these attack events, which aggression loves attack events, you're getting to remove a threat, which, yeah, it's limited once per phase, but every time that main scheme ticks up by 1 in solo, you're just bringing it back down just because you attacked. So you can just lean into doing all the attacky aggression things really well, and I think that is super, super fun. At number 2, we have Psylocke, and I love Psylocke. She can get free attack and piercing, baseline turn 1, off you go, which is crazy for any, basic attacky builds. But you can give her free threat removal turn 1. In fact, that's the baseline sort of configuration that it starts on, and that's kind of done by changing her katana and knife around. The 2 sides, of the same card, and she has 2 of them. So yeah, you can just have free threat removal on your hero card, which means aggression's threat removal is already solved. If you weren't convinced, mental detection can remove anywhere between 1, 3, and 5 threat, which means however big the threat is that you need to deal with, you can do it efficiently and keep your turn going. Probably draw into cards if you don't need that much threat removal, or otherwise just decimate that side scheme. And hey, maybe you're free to use your piercing, huge basic attack, which is crazy because she has access to all these physicals and mental resource generators. On her side katanas or knives. You can play her with like hone techniques super well, or you can play her with just regular aggression cards that are like physical resources. You can go and drop kick your little heart out with Psylocke and completely stun and confuse like the villain, or whatever you want. She's got the resources. You could just, flood the board with allies. She does it all. And that's before we even talk about exploring the aggression psionic cards. Last but certainly not least is Cyclops, and I know, it's another multi-aspect character, but again, kind of like Gamora, you could just play him with any aggression cards, and I think he would do extremely well. In fact, I'll go on further and say, you could play Cyclops without any of the X-Men allies, and he would still do extremely well in any aspect, but certainly aggression, because he can do stuff with tactics and minion upgrades. He can do stuff with just allies in general and boot camp. He's got a lot of different avenues because his threat removal is so solid between his amazing, brilliant thwarting event. He's got Ricochet Beam, which is sort of a multi kind of target attack potentially. He can also use his Optic Blast for quite reliable damage, and you can kind of combo even that with things like Warrior Skill if you really wanted to, or Yarnborn. You know, there's all sorts you can do with him. You know, it might sound crazy with how good Cyclops is in leadership, but I think for fun, I just really actually enjoy him in aggression so much. That kind of brings us to the end here. Not a hugely long video. Hopefully this was interesting. I want to reiterate, this was not a list based on power, so I'm not saying Cyclops is more powerful than Vision, although technically I would, but you know what I mean. It wasn't meant to be in that order. And it wasn't meant to be, oh, you know, the first one is better than the, last one, or vice versa. It was really just an order I thought was interesting to talk about them. Hopefully this has given you some ideas, to play like, basic attack or ally builds, event builds. There's a whole mixture of heroes you can do very, very different things with here in aggression, in solo play, and expect good results. If I did have to pick for power, or maybe perhaps suggest somewhere not to start if you're a bit unsure of it, I think Black Widow and Rogue might have slightly the hardest time here. Rogue is quite dependent on your deck build, and Black Widow is perhaps just a little bit less powerful kind of in a vacuum than these other characters, but they're all very good, all very possible, and I do really recommend Black Widow and Aggression. I think it's super fun. Thanks guys, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.